Hello everyone, and welcome back. It has been a while since I made an actual video, and yes, you read the title correctly. This video will be about how the Butcher is, and always has been, better than the Betelgeuse. I think a lot of people would ask why I even bother to make a video like this in a decade-old shooter that only has a handful of people that play, but I've wanted to make this video for a long time now, and I finally have an excuse to actually make it with the discussion around my most recent video, which you can find here. So, let's talk about it. A little bit of backstory as to why I'm making this video. There have always been debates on whether or not one faction is better than the other, and I'm obviously no stranger to having these sorts of discussions. But, for some reason, and most of the time, it's the Terran Republic players that have a strange hatred and beef towards the Vanu sovereignty. And in this regard, it comes down to the Betelgeuse versus the Butcher a lot of the time when talking about their arsenals and weapons comparatively. Maybe this is just my background being a VS Madison player and then merging into Emerald, but it has always seemed to be at the forefront when it comes to discussing faction balance. Or maybe it's just the one that I happen to see the most. Who knows? Either way, I actively lose brain cells every time I try to discuss this, so I'll make this video as short as I can while trying to encompass most of why the Butcher is better. And I guess there will be some people who ask about qualifications. Yes, I do have a disgusting amount of time with all three factions and all three faction Araxium LMGs and LMGs in general. The time on each account doesn't reflect any alternate accounts I've made, such as this one. These stats are pulled from Voidwell, by the way. So, you can say I have a decent amount of experience with these weapons. With all that covered, let's dive in. So, getting straight into it, the one point that everybody loves to bring up in this comparison is something to do with quote-unquote pacing, or in other words, how frequently you can engage enemies with the Betelgeuse compared to the Butcher. This is most of the time described as, but the infinite ammo though, or something to do with, you don't have to reload. This point is easily dismissed through demonstration. I'm interrupting this demonstration because I don't think people need to see the rest because the point is clearly demonstrated, and also because I want this video to be somewhat entertaining at the very least. So let me demonstrate this again, but in a different way very briefly, because the people who need to see this video the most are likely the ones who have already commented or will dismiss the rest of the video anyway. As you can see, number one, the Butcher can put up the same amount of bullets downrange as the Betelgeuse at the same quote-unquote pace or rate, and even more if the trigger is held down. So let me entertain you with some math as well. Just to make the math easy, to even match the 300 rounds the Butcher has, the Betelgeuse has to expend its entire 45 rounds 7 times in a row, either reloading or cooling down. If you don't have extended mags on the Butcher for some reason, number one, you better be running a laser sight, and number two, the Betelgeuse still has to fully empty its magazine 3 times plus a little extra to match the 150 rounds the Butcher has access to at any given time. So, my question to all the people that this video is made for, and who have probably already paused the video and rushed to the comment section to defend their TR victim complex, is this. Why do you ignore the fact that you can quote-unquote pace yourself even better with the Butcher than you can with the Betelgeuse? I've already shown you the math, and I've already clearly demonstrated that if you wanted to, just pause with the Butcher in the same way you would with the Betelgeuse. Let the Butcher cool down, if you will. So I think saying the Betelgeuse is better because of its quote-unquote pacing or flow is just a load of BS. There are very few people in very few situations who can actually take advantage of a full 300 rounds, but also very few people who can stay alive long enough to send 300 rounds in total downrange from a Betelgeuse. But here's the thing, guys. If you say that a person can stay alive long enough to take advantage of the quote-unquote infinite ammo the Betelgeuse has, then you have to be consistent without cognitive dissonance and say people can easily stay alive long enough to take advantage of 300 rounds in a butcher as well. This would be logically consistent. In short, if you can stay alive long enough to take advantage of one of them, you can stay alive long enough to take advantage of the other as well. I will also add on to this demonstration really quick and say that the recoil is insanely similar and manageable on both weapons, which is why I don't buy the argument that people bring up, which is that the Butcher has more recoil or less accuracy than the Betelgeuse. And the only reason why you see the parts where recoil could be hard to control is after I've been holding down the trigger and my mouse moved all the way down my mouse pad to compensate. Or you could probably chalk up most of it to human error because obviously my recoil control isn't the best, but it's still pretty good. If we're taking this argument as a gotcha, then I guess if you want to go that far, every LMG in the NC arsenal is better than the Gauss saw because the recoil is a lot harsher on the saw than other weapons. But that doesn't sound like a very good point to make though, does it? Let's just get this out of the way. The Butcher and the Betelgeuse have the same ADS accuracy stats in-game as you can see here, and I've already demonstrated their recoil is functionally the same. But if you want to say the Butcher is less accurate on a technicality, then go ahead. The video comparison still speaks for itself. I also play on 90 FOV with wide view mode enabled, and a claim that I'm somehow abusing FOV is ludicrous and just full of cope. Well, since I've fully explained that, and everyone this video is made for is left, we can get on to some other points. To the point of reloading, which I know people will bring up in the comments, reloading a 300 round magazine is either an accident or done deliberately. As you can see from the demonstration, you can quote-unquote pace yourself the exact same way as the Betelgeuse, and even better because of the insane magazine size and ability to hold down the trigger. Either way, you're going to have to acknowledge that the pacing you can get from the Butcher at least equals the Betelgeuse in this regard. And everyone knows that you can easily reload the Butcher given most people in the game aren't hitting 15 kills per minute to a point where reloading 300 rounds would be impactful. Even at such a pace, I've already demonstrated you can easily make up for the reload time of the Butcher by just holding down the trigger in a theoretical scenario. There will also be a lot of people who bring up the fact that the Betelgeuse has a lot more overall kills or overall higher KPM than the Butcher, even comparing accuracy stats and the like too. But they never factor in skill or arsenal variety. They just ignore the fact that a lot of people actively get the Betelgeuse purely because these people have helped their own opposition by praising the very weapon that causes them to post all of this on forums and Reddit and downgrading their own arsenal through propaganda and imposter syndrome. But maybe nobody is ready to talk about that last one just yet. Anyway, it seems like people don't realize the utility of this weapon because a lot of people on their own faction say Carve is better or MSW is better without giving it much thought. So let me just explain this again really quickly for the people who might not get it yet. So if we're strictly talking about KPM, the demonstration I did earlier clearly proves that you can in fact get better KPM with the Butcher because you don't have to reload and you can just hold down the trigger as well as quote-unquote pace yourself at the same rate you would with the Betelgeuse. So this just goes to show people can easily get the same stats with the Butcher as they would with the Betelgeuse. My own experience on this alt account I showed you earlier proves this. While I'm editing, I forgot to mention that that alt count was created even before the Butcher had extended mags, so do with that information what you will. However, a lot of people will still just say that's anecdotal, or maybe you're just a good player. But if you say that, you are actively having to acknowledge that skill is inherently involved in this, and that's a place a lot of people don't want to go. A lot of people just don't want to say there could be a skill difference to this, as in maybe there is a slightly higher percentage of skilled players playing on one faction regularly compared to another. Or the fact that the Betelgeuse is the only other Orion-like platform on the VS compared to TR, which has two other weapons similar to the MSW, those being the Carve and the Butcher. That would mean one more weapon spreads out the overall stats on the same platform of weapon. If we can't acknowledge all of these as probabilities, then good luck trying to find other explanations as to why the Butcher can fire more sustainably than the Betelgeuse, yet lacks in stats representation for something like KPM. And I've already discussed how they have the same ADS accuracy and the recoil is similarly very manageable, as well as shown you how you can get quote-unquote Betelgeuse-like stats on this weapon if we really wanted to compare them like that. And so the final point I'll make related to my other video is one I want to address directly, and it also probably applies to some of the clips in this video as well, which is essentially this. You can just as easily get those clips with a Betelgeuse, MSWR, or Orion. I've already dismissed the other arguments in this post, so we're just addressing the highlighted portion. And my answer to this is, well, yeah, obviously. I think this encompasses what I'm trying to say very well and actually does more to favor the Butcher than the people saying it realize. If you can just replace one weapon with another, that generally means it has the same effectiveness as those other weapons in that situation. So essentially what you're saying is it is just as easy to use the Butcher in those same clips as the Betelgeuse, and vice versa. What you're doing is you're putting the Butcher and the Betelgeuse on the same level, but somehow also stating and complaining that the Betelgeuse is just better. Unfortunately, you will need to either make up your mind on this or just come up with something better. Two things I doubt people making the Betelgeuse better though argument can do. Also, I would love for someone to try and convince me that in these same situations the Butcher is worse, or that somehow the recoil is slightly worse and therefore it's less effective, blah blah blah, even though in these clips the average engagement distance is probably 20 to 30 meters, where if I'm being honest, if you can't control the recoil, then just go back to playing The Sims or something, because nobody can help you with that. So, to summarize this video, the only argument that is even somewhat valid that has ever been brought forward is that the Butcher has more recoil and therefore less accuracy. Even then, I've demonstrated how easy it is to control the recoil, and I've already shown you my own stats that show that you can get the same stats as the Betelgeuse. I think my own 42% accuracy with a 4.5 kpm is enough to convince people, and if it isn't, then try to stop inhaling that military-grade copium and try to figure out why I can do it and you can't. Or just rewatch the video where I discuss something called skill difference. And with that, I think this video is done. I think I've demonstrated and elaborated very clearly why the Butcher is better than the Betelgeuse. If you want to comment about a point I haven't made in favor of the Butcher, please do so in the comments and maybe I'll pin it. If you disagree with this video, which I'm sure a lot of people do, then maybe we can have a better discussion on here than on Reddit or something. I hope I don't see any comments on things I've addressed in the video though, but I'm probably bound to. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I will see you on the battlefield.